Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Once again, I'm very excited to be here on the NetOps Expert. And as always, joined as my counterpart and teammate, Alec Pinkham is here. Alec, say hi to everyone.
Hi, thanks for having me again.
All right. And we are very happy to be joined by a longtime collaborator and partner and friend, I should say, Nick Lippis. Nick Lippis is the co-founder of ONUG. For those folks who don't know what ONUG is, Open Networking User Group. And I'm going to let him tell you all about it. But I just want to say one of the biggest things I get out of it is the ability to collaborate not only with other vendors out there, but to hear from the enterprise themselves what their challenges are so we can meet them directly. So, Nick, welcome to the NetOps Expert.
Awesome. Jeremy, thank you so much. I'm so psyched to be here. Thanks for the invite. Alec, nice to meet you as well. So I'm ready.
Excellent,
Let's
go. Nick. We are very happy to be here, and we're very happy to join the ONUG's or the AI Networking Summit in the fall in New York City. And we're going to get into that. But Nick, can you tell folks a little bit about where you came from, what you're doing, and what you plan to do down the road?
Yeah. So thanks for the question. Yeah, I kind of spent like a little bit more than 2 decades, early in my career as an independent industry analyst. I started a company called Strategic Networks back in 1991. I sold that to SoftBank in 1996, 97 timeframe. Took a little bit of time off and then just kind of got back into being kind of an independent industry analyst. I was writing something called the Lippis report at the time. And then there was a kind of a pivotal moment. I met Ernest Leffner, and Ernest was at Fidelity at the time, and it was just around the time when all these white boxes were kind of in networking was starting to pop up. And so Ernest, and we met at an ONS, Open Networking Summit, out on the West Coast. And he was like, hey, this is no place for like, consumers to meet, enterprises to meet, and to really talk about this stuff and what works, what doesn't work. He goes, how would you like to do like, a conference? And we'll do it at Fidelity. I'm like, okay, sure. That sounds like fun. So we did it, and that's how really ONUG started, and that was 2012, we had the conversation. 2013 is when we actually had the first one, which is in February in Boston. Really good planning, right? Like a week before is a blizzard, but it all worked out, and then, and so we've kind of, we've been at it for, a decade or so now, a little bit more than a decade. So I think that's it. Early on, academic, I'm a double E, I'm a systems engineer, and started at Digital Equipment Corporation, and built a kind of really large, probably the largest privately owned fiber optic network in the country at the time. And then went to the product side, which was their networks and communications group. And so I was kind of doing strategic planning, there. So I kind of like didn't do everything in chronological order, right? I kind of started a little bit in the middle, went forward, and then I kind of had to go back, So anyway, that's what I've done,
Well, I know the ONUG board, we're going to get into that now, is very excited that ONUG exists. I find it the most collaborative way to understand what customers out there are dealing with today when it comes to network delivery and beyond that. When you can hear it directly from them, when you can hear their use cases, and to be able to show them a solution that may be able to help them advance their network transformation strategies, we're all very excited about. So speaking of ONUG and the board, and what information you get from them, what are the latest challenges, let's say for 2024, the last just couple of years, that you're hearing from the board?
Yeah, and it's interesting, Jeremy. It's like the first 20, 25 years of my career, I spent a lot of time talking with the vendor community because I was an industry analyst. And then the last 10 years has been working with both, but, I hear more from the consumer side of the industry than I do from the vendor side of the industry. And there is this really big juxtaposition between the two, and I think we've seen these different waves, of narratives and conversations, that are really kind of driven by needs. And I think from the consumers. And right now, I think from really 2023 on, the whole focus has really been around the impact of AI on infrastructure, compute infrastructure in particular, because that's the ONUG community really lives at the intersection between applications and infrastructure. That's kind of their sweet spot. These are the folks who run the infrastructure for large corporations. So that's fundamentally changing on multiple different levels, right? So as companies start to use more and more AI workloads, traffic patterns are changing, latency requirements, are changing. The kinds of solutions that they're putting in place are changing. The design patterns are changing in the data center and also out into the wide area. Security is changing. So it's like, I think what's the biggest, conversation point is really about how do I get a mental model and understanding about how to approach all this in a way that's rational and in a way that I can actually create business value. And there's kind of schools of thought, and they're not mutually exclusive either, around the whole AI conversation. One is around kind of an ROI conversation. And when you're in IT, you get a lot of that, right? That's always been, how our industry has progressed. And so having a new technology is no different, than that. But there's another school of thought that basically says, no, this is a new platform. And we really need to invest in this platform because this platform is not only helping to create business value quicker, it's also helping to unlock engineered miracles. I'll talk about that in a little bit. So I think that's really what's happening. It's like that conversation dominates everything. We were so focused on multi-cloud for, a good 3 years or 4 years. And we know that multi-cloud is going to only accelerate with AI because a lot of companies obviously use the cloud providers. You look at the enormous amount of investments that the cloud providers are making, on the order of about $1 trillion or so in AI. And all of their applications and their constructs for the developers are all different. And those developers are gravitating towards those constructs that can best unlock the value and deliver the value that their application looks to deliver, right? And so that loyalty across the cloud providers is basically gone. It was dominated by one company, but now obviously that's being pretty well distributed. So multi-cloud is accelerating, and AI is actually accelerated to that. So I'm really glad that we did that work over the last 4 years, because that really helped set that infrastructure up for multi-cloud, both connectivity, security, and observability. And those who really kind of follow those kind of frameworks are in a much better position right now as they look to adopt AI or have their developers kind of drive AI, into their organizations. So anyway, long-winded answer to say, yeah, everyone's talking about AI.
I was going to say, maybe skipping ahead a little bit, but we've heard, from our own internal work as well as through customers, there's a couple different applications of AI right now in the network operations space. And I think generally it's natural language processing type ideas, right? It's either using it to query the data or using it to up-level a, L1 knock person, or trying to, provide a little bit more intelligence to that first triage step. But I was wondering what you've been hearing as far as the early applications of AI within network operations.
Yeah, and that's really good. Thanks for bringing that up. I haven't kind of thought through and have buckets yet, so these are going to be more kind of random, discussion points. Clearly around kind of configuration management, especially when you need to start understanding maybe a new product, so kind of an LLM to kind of help, move you through that process. The other thing, and you kind of started to allude to it, and that is what I find a part that's really exciting is how can we take a lot of the log information and all the telemetry information that's coming off of the infrastructure. And if you think about it, from all these different vendors, they're all different schemas. They all have different meanings for some of the same kinds of things. And so utilizing kind of an LLM, so this is clearly Gen AI applications, but utilizing that in order to not to canonicalize, but more about to try to just help to make sense of what those alarms and alerts and notifications are, in a way that is helpful and assists a lower level kind of engineer in the network operations center. So putting it into human language, that's extremely helpful. And because if you look at both networking and also security operations centers, there is such a massive gaping hole of talent available, right? Like there's like, orders of like almost like 3 million worldwide open recs for both network and security engineers. Like in the US, that might be around 750,000, somewhere around there. We're never going to close that gap by doing operations the way we've been doing it over the last 25, 30 years. So we need these tools to really help. And I think that one particular use case that you cited is, I think, one of the most exciting ones because it does two things. It helps get to root cause analysis, causality, much quicker. It also helps to upskill, those who are just coming into the industry. So I think those two in particular, upskilling and then and allowing them to have a bigger impact with the skill set that they have is a huge benefit, a huge value. So I think those two in particular are interesting. What's also interesting too is how AI is now moving into the protocol stacks, whether that's on security side or whether that's on kind of the networking side of things. And so there are the one real, I think, great benefit associated with is that within both NOC and also SOCs, there is a tremendous amount of toil to try to troubleshoot and figure something out. And so the more that you can kind of eliminate that toil, and the quicker that you can get towards an action, the quicker that you'll get to whether be able to reduce the mean time or increase the mean time to repair, or reduce the mean time to repair, right? You want short amount of time to like repair, So I think there's a whole kind of area, around how AI has the potential to really benefit both network operation centers and also security operation centers. On the security side too, it's pretty fascinating as well. You have the exploits that are coming in that are being notified, and then you have AI models that are actually writing code to mitigate that. And then you have security engineers that are reviewing that before they commit, that code. But we're seeing the same thing also on the network side, as well. So I think we're really in for a really exciting time where we can be a lot more efficient around our operations, and be able to actually do it with kind of appropriate staff and without that staff being skitzed out and not skitzed out. That's a bad way to think about it, but without being overtaxed, is kind of like, what I'm seeing right now.
Really around the fact that it will take a little while to build these models. And so we need to capture the institutional knowledge that's available today, because as we lose those people to retirement or to burnout or, things like that, we need to make sure that we're training the models with the expert hands that are there today. So that's really interesting. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, well, I think the more that we do that, then the more that we have institutional knowledge like built within the operations, right? Because we know that so many people who if we just think about kind of firewall rules, it's like some of these rules, like, there are millions of lines of code, and you have people who wrote those rules, years before. And so all of a sudden you're trying to like figure those out. And those people are gone, now it extends the amount of time that you have outages. And so being able to have that institutional knowledge actually within the infrastructure is huge. It's really huge.
Yeah, Nick, I wanted to, you're kind of preaching to the choir here because, we're in the early stages and nobody expects AI to solve all our problems today. So what we continue to preach about here is the low-hanging fruit use cases, right? There's no reason why analytics and algorithms and AI can't help with alarm noise reduction and configuration compliance, like you mentioned. I'd love to figure out where you got that stat from because I want to use it. But the 3 million open recs for network and security engineers, Alec and I just did a outside research project for the 2024 State of Network Operations, and a lack of skill sets was the number two reason behind budget that folks believed that they could not advance their strategies accordingly to business outcomes. So.
I think particularly around network observability there. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah, well, it makes sense because you can't even find a rec. It's like most recs are open for like at least 9 months, if not longer. The skill set gap is huge. But I'm surprised that actually budget was higher than skill sets. I would have thought skill set was higher. That like they'll throw money at it just to fix the problem. But because you could do that, it's like finding the people is harder.
Well, you mentioned AI, and you mentioned ONUG's view of how you believe AI is going to have a huge impact on making things easier for network operations centers today, which is what we need to do, right? Lack of skill sets, complex technology, producing so much noise. We need to give the L1 and the L2s an easy button, basically. I hate to say it that way, but we have to simplify the day-to-day. And AI can help with that. So we're really excited. I mean, the day Alec and I can walk into a NOC and say, hey, NOC bot, users in Seattle are calling me and complaining. What should I start looking at? And then if the NOC bot says, well, we did notice some of the abnormal traffic on this router in Seattle, so why don't you start there? I mean, that's going to be some really good times. So tell us what ONUG Fall in New York City, which we're really excited about, coming in October. Tell us what we can expect when it comes to the topic of AI and network operations.
Okay, so all right, so that wasn't the question I thought you were going to ask. So I'm going to go back.
Go for
it. All right, so
this is going to be our B reel.
Yeah, I love kind of like a vision when it's like, are we overhyping AI? I'm sure we are to like some extent, but I kind of view it's almost like the internet, like back in the mid 1990s time frame.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody was saying at the time is that the internet changes everything, and we were friggin' right. It has changed everything, and now we're saying the same thing, about kind of another monster technology that has amazing amount of investment going into it, and we're seeing the returns, on various different companies like. But anyway, I think the kind of the vision for network operations, like over this next like 3 to 5 years, is kind of a culmination of some of the stuff that we've been talking about. Is you have institutional knowledge that is kind of used to teach the algorithms kind of what is actually in the infrastructure. You also have a lot of kind of L1 and L2, and maybe you don't need as many of them, now, that are able to run kind of a larger or large scale operation. So the amount of people that you'll need running operations hopefully gets reduced. Also, the amount of time it takes to fix issues that are broken, the amount of time that it takes to do capacity planning. Also, there's one thing to consider too, is that we're in an area and a time frame where it's very unforeseen requirements are popping up, right? It's like how once we start to have more and more AI workloads, the traffic patterns will change, right? The latency requirements we know are going to be changing, and so if you have some really good models that can actually test different configurations in the construct of like a digital twin, and then turn those on once. I saw like a really good example, a really good demo. I won't mention the company, but it's like you can have kind of the existing network that's running throughout, all packets running, and then that is basically being ciphered off, and you have a kind of a mirror image, like a digital twin of that network running. And you make all these changes, and it could be coming from developers that are about to launch a new application. So you kind of have it directly in line with the CI/CD pipeline, and then and so you want to launch that application, and then that digital twin starts to make all the changes associated with that, and then you can actually run that with real data without making it operational. And then once you're really comfortable with that, then the switch, the flip, or you can flip the switch. It's those kinds of things, and that could be automated, as well. So it's like those kinds of things where we are moving into an area and a period where things are unknown, and also where the rate of pace or the pace of change is extremely high. Having these AI tools that you can trust, and trust is going to be a big deal. The more that we can, it's going to take time to trust these models, but like once we get to that point of like trust, we should be in a really good place where the operations becomes a highly automated event, and that the organization can actually change much quicker to meet market demands. So anyway, I'm bullish and optimistic on how operations is now, the trajectory that it's on, and how it's going to change. And and the work that you guys do over at Broadcom and helping to facilitate that is contributing to that. Anyway, I just wanted to kind of
I'm going to give Alec a soft.
You want to?
I'm going to give Alec a softball right now. You brought up a wonderful use case, especially about the digital twin, but trust but verify. That's what we say here, right? Especially with like the SD-WAN orchestrator. So, before you turn that digital twin on, that network that has now replicated those changes from the other network, active synthetic testing of that entire network path before turning the lights on as well is what we preach here.
And I think even beyond that, right, is having a system that you can run in production, right? Because it's so complicated today that, the networks that you're relying on are going to change minute by minute, if not second by second, which means that if you're not testing during production to some degree to understand where traffic is going, we talked about it, earlier on with multi-cloud or with, reliance on SD-WAN and, ISP underlays, right? It changes so often that understanding when you get a network disruption, when did that happen, right? Did it happen 10 minutes ago? Did it happen at 2 hours ago, right? We always used to talk about the idea that, what's the first thing you do when there's an outage, right? You maybe take a break, go get coffee, right? And then maybe you check with a colleague and say, oh, is that app still down? Huh, interesting. And then about 30 minutes later, unless it's really business critical, then you might alert IT or someone who can actually do something about it, which means that all that data is lost unless you're constantly looking at production. And so I think what's interesting about the digital twin idea, and we saw this past summer with CrowdStrike, right, is the people who don't have a hot standby or something already up and running, you're taking a risk there when you turn that on, right? Unless you're doing some kind of extra validation there. And I think that's where AI could be very helpful. But, as Jeremy mentioned, the active testing side of it is also a huge part of it because it can run in production and you can get some assurances that you're not going to have an immediate, kind of outage as soon as you flip that switch.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, with the CrowdStrike, what was the feedback that we're getting is no one wants to just accept new patches automatically. They want to test them first. Before and get it all approved first. Make sure that this patch isn't going to like basically break a whole bunch of stuff, and then do the patch. So I think there's kind of security by demand. Mechanisms that are going to start rolling out this year and into next for sure. So I think that kind of like, and that's, you look at that's kind of a security requirement, but also it's like the whole network and security landscape is so converging, like so quickly, so I think anything that's being done in AI on the networking side, there's probably a very large overlap with what it's maybe underpinning technologies can be applied to use cases into like the SecOps, world as well. But you were asking about the summit. You want to talk about that?
Please tell everyone about what's coming up, and let's get them excited.
Yeah, I think one thing I'm like super excited about is Svigal's talk. So Svigal is the CTO of Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center.
Okay.
Right, the largest, most prestigious cancer center like on the planet. So then Svi, he's the CTO there. He used to be the CTO at Morgan Stanley, and I think at UBS at one point in time. I hope I got that right on UBS. Anyway, he's an ONUG board member, as well. So Svi, they built an AI infrastructure, and so this gets to that whole ROI thing. So a lot of folks, again, kind of focusing, okay, well, what is my return on investment if I invest in this thing? Their approach was very different. Their approach was that, hey, listen, it's like we believe that that these AI models can help accelerate cancer treatments and also cancer research. And so Svi is going to talk about how they've actually done that they actually have been able to identify cures for some very specific cancers, with their AI tools, essentially being able to model, DNA and being able to test, the response, towards, a kind of a body, a system, a biological system with various different drugs that are undergoing various different cancers, and how they were able to accelerate that. So that, and also how they've been able to accelerate the research of other cancers built upon that. So Svi told me when I was preparing, when I was kind of prepping him for like, this coming up summit, he's like, Nick, what I'm telling you is that, the research has been accelerated, by at least 10 to 15 years. 10 to 15 years. We can do things now that we thought we would never be able to do, or at least might be done within a decade and a half away. He goes, we're going to approach a period of time where you may go to see your doctor and complaining about something, and they're going to say, Nick, I got some bad news. I got some good news. Bad news is that you have a cancer. The good news is that you take these pills for some period of time, and then your cancer will be gone. He goes, no radiation, no chemotherapy, no surgery. And I'm like, I'm blown away by that. So he's going to talk about that, at this summit. I can only hope, that trajectory stays, and has so much weight because it's coming from Sloan, and it's coming from Svi, so I am like so excited for him to share that story with everyone, because I think that's what I mean by engineered miracles. That's a miracle. If we are able to, tens of millions of people on the planet, overcome, whether a chronic disease or a fatal diagnosis, that is a miracle. So I think that's so I'm really excited about that for sure. And we'll talk about other miracles, as well, across different industry sectors. So I think that's a big part of what this summit is about. And I think how that relates towards our community is that we are now in the business of miracle enablement. So you're not just putting together an infrastructure so that you can, accounting can, run their spreadsheet much quicker. You're now enabling a whole new set of solutions for humanity. No matter what your industry sector is, that's your job now. You are enabling that. And I find that so exciting in this period within our industry. So I think that's that. And then I think also a big part of this too is this technology really needs to be democratized. NVIDIA is a great company, but we need more solutions. We need a much broader range of solutions in the marketplace. So we have AMD coming up right after Svi. And we have Sony, who's on the networking side of it. And we have, I think it's Brian, who's on the GPU side of AMD. And they're going to be talking about, their AI infrastructure offerings and how they are now helping to democratize. So I think, so there's a lot more kind of going on. There's a ton of going on, but I think I wanted to just kind of highlight those two important kind of components.
Yeah, I know you had Hassan Siraj, the executive over, one of the executives over at our core switching group. We call it the CSG group here at Broadcom in the spring, talking about similar topics and the vision and roadmap for where we can take Broadcom chipsets in order to help with use cases like that. Nick, I got to say real quick, I don't think I've ever heard a more beautiful IT technical use case in my entire life than the one you just gave around AI helping to keep our loved ones with us a lot longer than maybe they would have without this type of technology. That is quite exciting, and a session I won't miss this fall in New York City.
Yeah, I'm super excited, about it. And you're right, like Hassan, we had a really great session, and I should have noticed, mentioned this. My apologies for not. But clearly, Broadcom is like in the democratization, marketplace as well. And you guys leading it to a large degree, not just on the networking side, but also on the DPU and GPU, side of the marketplace. Also. So, and I know that you guys have a keynote also. I think it's on day one or day two. I forget which one it is. But anyway, so that, so I think what a lot of people are going to get are hopefully options and choices and new ways of thinking on how they build this infrastructure so that they can enable the miracles that their industry and their companies can actually deliver upon. So I think that's the main, I think, walk away that I think we're going to be able to deliver, in a couple of weeks in Manhattan. So.
Oh my God, that's right. It's just a few weeks away. My goodness.
Like 6 weeks.
Before we sign off, Alec, can I, anything else you want to drop in here with? Any food for thought?
I think that's all great kind of insight into where the conference is going, because I think that's something we've seen with the transition to, the AI Networking Summit is just looking forward, right? Is what's next? What's the edge cases that are being tested out now? And I think that's the kind of inspiration that people need in order to think about an application for their own world and maybe push the boundaries of it. Because I think, as we mentioned, with a skills gap and a sort of long road ahead as far as training up AI to do what we think it can do, right? We need to test it in 100 different ways and with 1,000 different applications. So I think this is really good, and I'm excited for it.
Yeah, well, thanks, Alec. We put a lot of time into this one, and Tony Fernacci, who's now working with us, just retired from J.P. Morgan Chase. He's been super with this, but it's like our registration is running 2x of what it was last year in the fall.
Nice.
So we're in a much bigger facility, now. I think we're probably going to get anywhere between 45 and 50 sponsors, on the show floor. So it's getting to be of size, which is actually exciting. We don't want it to be like this big, 10,000, people, what's the word I'm looking for?
Event out there,
just like, boondoggle. Boondoggle. We want it to be like, really substantial and substantive, and that people walk away with tangible ideas, and that they have a good experience, great experience. So we are having, at the end of the second night, we are having kind of an open band. So we have a band, and we are going to be having, folks from the community come up. So, all right. So Jeremy, what do you play?
Guitar. I play many instruments, but my main instrument is a guitar and my voice. So.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
So what are you going to play?
Oh, I got a big set list I'm getting together. I'm not allowing anyone else up on stage. It's a solo act. No, I'm
the only problem, Nick. The only problem, Nick, is we've realized that he can only have green M&Ms in the green room. So
yeah, I'll send you my rider. Well, I'll get my agent to send you my rider.
It's a small thing, but it really makes this day.
It's the only thing on the rider. There's nothing else. Well, listen, Nick.
I might join
again.
As well.
Yeah, please. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a fun couple days.
It'll be fun.
I would like to say, Nick, I really want to let everyone know, and personally, that the space you have created for this type of forum, if you're really technical and want to come and get into the bits and bytes of a certain solution or use case, you can do that at ONUG. If you want to sit at a higher level with executives and compare challenges, you can do that as well. So it's really great that you created this space where we can continue to innovate. Especially, I am beyond still touched and thinking about the use case you just talked about. Listen, if there's a lack of skill sets and not enough people to hire to manage this IT infrastructure that's going to power AI, then maybe we need to let AI do what it's going to do and just simplify our jobs in getting these cures or getting over these challenges. So. Once again, Nick Lippis, I want to thank you so much, co-founder of ONUG, the Open Networking User Group. I appreciate your partnership and your collaboration, and I look forward to seeing you in New York City in October. So I'll buy you a beer and we'll sing songs.
Awesome. Oh, that'll be great. Jeremy, thank you so much. Alec, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for plugging in, as well. It's a pleasure. Love working with you guys.
Great. I'm going to put the links for the conference in the show notes.
Yeah.
And once again, thank you so much for joining us, and stay tuned for another episode of the NetOps Expert.